A lot of these visions and visitations that Daniel had a way of shaking him up and zapping his strength. And so it's kind of interesting to look into that aspect of Daniel's visitations. Not only did they shake him up and zap his strength, but he was also strengthened throughout. So, largely to go into a kind of a review of just how much these visitations that Daniel had and these visions that came with these visitations. So he was having these visitations via angels, more than one. And of course, this came with visions, accompanied these visitations. So not only was he visited by angels and was spoken to by these angels, he was also given these visions at the same time that he was visited by these angels. So accompanying these angels were visions and conversations, Daniel even talking to these angels. And so, without going completely into the whole vision, it's interesting to see the effect it had on Daniel, let's say, mentally, spiritually, physically. And you get an insight into this largely at the end of the visions that he had. You can kind of give a quick summary of the kind of visions he was getting and the kind of conversations that he was having at the end of, let's say, Daniel chapter 7. So the angels were visiting him. One in particular was called Gabriel, and it appears to be Gabriel throughout. And it appears there were two other angels as well. If not, also there was a visitation via Jesus Christ himself, maybe an angel of God's presence. But either way, this visitation had a way of shaking Daniel up. So he's really shaken up by these visions, these visitations and visions and their messages and the conversations. So quite a great matter, but without going into the whole thing. And it's kind of encouraging in a lot of ways because when you think about it, really, these visions of the Antichrist, we now hear so much talk about the Antichrist or even the second coming of Jesus Christ. That where did all this come from for a start? Well, largely talk of the Antichrist has its roots and its origins really with Daniel in the Old Testament. So we're kind of 600 BC. We're now 2000 years AD. And so quite a long time ago, and these visions spanning into the future, our future, and everything in these visions and visitations all coming true, culminating with the arising of an antichrist and the second coming of Jesus Christ. So it's not all discouraging in the books of Daniel, particularly from Daniel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, all dealing with these visitations that he was having via these angels, and one in particular being Gabriel. And even having a vision like John in the New Testament of what appears to be Jesus Christ, even stood on waters, so a message directly from Jesus Christ, a message which certainly came from Gabriel, and these other angels involved in these visitations. So quite and even Michael the Archangel involved in one particular visitation in Daniel 10. Daniel 10, 11, and 12 are all one book. And Michael the angel also in the mix here amongst these visitations. So quite a what kind of effect did this have on Daniel? Well, of course, varying degrees of effects, no doubt shaking him up and also zapping his strength. But also interesting and nice to know that there is an intervention here by these angels in strengthening Daniel throughout. So it's not all doom and gloom with the prophecies of Daniel. There is also, not only did he see the rising of an antichrist in these visions, and not only did he see the rise and fall of many great empires in these visions, all culminating in the rise of an antichrist empire, followed by another great empire being the kingdom of God on earth via Jesus Christ at the second coming, setting up his kingdom here and ruling this world with the saints in the millennium, as it would turn out to be, which was prophesied by John in the book of Revelation. And John in the book of Revelation, when he had his visitation via an angel and a vision of Jesus, he, like Daniel, was suddenly knocked for a loop and found himself fell down at the feet of Jesus in the visitation. This is John, as dead. And of course, with John, a hand touched him and told him to fear not and strengthen him and what have you. So you think, well, what kind of an effect does this have on a man, to get these visitations and these visions and what have you? Well, you've got some accounts of it here. Let's get into the mind of Daniel and how this affected him mentally, spiritually, physically, and how these angels strengthened him throughout. And kind of a summary, really, of the main thrust of the visions and visitations, though Daniel was told of various empires which would rise and fall. The main thrust of the visitations, you could say, is kind of summed up here in Daniel chapter 7, without going into everything that he saw and heard and the conversations that he had. You can kind of sum it up in a nutshell here in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. And he's talking about the rise of the Antichrist world, and particularly the last 3.5 years of man's history under the Antichrist before Jesus Christ returns to this earth. So the happy ending of the story, of course, there's going to be the rise of an Antichrist, but the happy ending to the story is the second coming of Jesus Christ. So he's saying here, just to sum up where these visions were all going and what Gabriel even was talking about, and these visions that accompanied Gabriel in all of this, culminating and climaxing here in Daniel chapter 7 largely. And it's saying, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. So this is kind of a conversation here, really, the angel telling him what this Antichrist is going to do. And he, the Antichrist, right, and he shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. So these things tend to wear us out, right? We find that we have this conclusion that we're in the last days, there's going to be the rise of an Antichrist, and it tends to wear us out. So he, the Antichrist, right, shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. And think to change times and laws. Well, we're in a rapidly changing world now. Again, this all leads us to wonder what on earth is going on. It tends to be quite overwhelming. And to think times and laws are changing so rapidly now, we're in a world that's now been suddenly at the end of 2020 and whatever at the beginning of 2020 was disrupted. Everything has been disrupted. You might even look on your own disrupted life and think the course of your life was changed through this massive apocalyptic, really, disruption of everything. Everything has been disrupted. Your normal course, maybe you had a cycle of behavior or a cycle of things you would do or didn't do. And now suddenly your cycle of living has changed, and there's things you're not doing now that you used to do. And so everything has been disrupted. We've gone through quite a traumatic couple of years now. Everything has been disrupted, and the course of everyone's life has been disrupted. The whole of society in every country has been disrupted. Everything has been disrupted, and we're in the midst of massive change, and everyone's cycle of their lives, the cycle of everything really, has been disrupted. So this tends to be really, really, really overwhelming. And, is there any wonder we come to conclusions? Are we witnessing the rise of something like the rise of an antichrist here? And so we look into the prophecies of Daniel. And again, all of this can kind of overwhelm us. So it's kind of interesting to get into the mind of Daniel and what happened to him throughout these visitations. So a conclusion here in Daniel 7 really would be this, that concludes all of these visitations, right? As from Daniel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So half of the book of Daniel, these all of these chapters here, 12 chapters in the book of Daniel, and as from 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, pretty much, and even Daniel chapter 2, largely taken up with the arising of an antichrist, culminating in this world empire of the antichrist, then culminating in the second coming of Jesus Christ. So quite mind-blowing stuff, and this going on over even years of these visitations taking place in Daniel's life, and him being quite shook up at times by the whole thing, but not always just shook up. But often these angels would strengthen him. So the culminating verses here of the whole thing, and the theme running through Daniel, even Daniel chapter 2, right? Particularly Daniel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all talking about the rising of an antichrist, the world empire of the antichrist, and then the second coming of Jesus Christ and his kingdom being set up on earth is the thrust of the whole message. So quite mind-blowing stuff. And he arrives here, and he, the Antichrist, shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. We tend to be overwhelmed and worn out these days, for sure, that let alone what's going to happen when the Antichrist arises, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, where things are changing so rapidly now. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. A time being 1 year, times being 2 years, and the dividing of time being half a year. So ultimately, all this power and world dominion, this great world empire, the Antichrist, is going to culminate in 3.5 year reign of the Antichrist in particular, when he comes into full power. He's going to set up his kingdom on earth, right? This Antichrist going to set up this world empire. But he comes into full sway and has full power for 3.5 years. And that's when he thinks to change times and laws. And they're given into his hands for 3.5 years. So he kind of ultimately has 3.5 years in office, just like in America, they might have 4 years in office, Britain, they're 5. He has kind of 3.5 years in office, right, on earth, as being the prince of the covenant, as he's called, the Antichrist, the savior of the whole world. Jesus was actually had 3.5 years. His ministry actually lasted about 3.5 years, actually. And so it's like now it's the devil's turn to see what he's going to do with his Antichrist, the false and fake Messiah, for 3.5 years. So ultimately culminating in 3.5 year reign of the Antichrist. So it's a short-lived reign of the Antichrist, and that should be encouraging, because once he rises to full power, we then know that it's only for 3.5 years. And during that 3.5 years, it says he's going to think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, time 1 year, times 2 years, and the dividing of time 3.5 years. But it says, verse 26, the judgment shall sit, right? God's ordained that Jesus Christ is going to come back, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the saints of the shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. So there you have the second coming of Jesus Christ, setting up his kingdom on earth, and the saints finally ruling and reigning with Jesus Christ, and the Antichrist kingdom, of course, coming to an end at the second coming of Jesus Christ. He's that wicked, it says, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. And so Jesus Christ sets up his kingdom on earth under the saints of all ages. So that's the happy ending to the story, right? So, and how did this, hitherto is the end of the matter, right? So that was the end of the vision, basically, and that was the main thrust of all of these visions in Daniel 7 and like I say, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all dealing with the same great matters of the rising of an Antichrist and the second coming of Jesus Christ. So at the end of chapter 7, you think, well, what did this do to you, Daniel? How did this affect you, let's say, mentally, spiritually, even physically? Well, Daniel says in his own words, hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me. So his mind was blown. And you think his thinking and the wheels in his mind were no doubt blown, and the wheels, what on earth? I mean, Daniel chapter 7 was really largely the beginning, really, of these great visitations and these visions of the rising of an Antichrist, and all this spout out to him while he was on his bed, just going to sleep, no doubt, suddenly goes into these visions and visitations, right? And so it's quite mind-blowing. And of course, at the end of all this, how does this affect you, if you could say to Daniel, well, how did this affect you mentally, spiritually, or even physically? What kind of state of mind were you in at the end of these visions? Hitherto is the end of the matter, Daniel say. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations, which I'm assuming he means is thinking, his mind was blown, the wheels of the head now turning around. My cogitations, his thoughts, right, much troubled me. So very mind-blowing. He's getting all this in vision, right? That and as for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me. So you picture his countenance changed as his face like very sobered up after getting all of these visions and visitations, and so his countenance changed in me. But I kept the matter in my heart. So it had quite a mind-blowing effect on Daniel, and his mind turning round, his cogitations much troubled him, and his countenance changed. No doubt he had to go about his business, working under the king. And he's very much shook up and sobered up by all of this, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. So there's one effect it had on Daniel. Well, at the end of Daniel 8, you get another, without going into the whole vision, the main thrust of Christmas, what I've said already. And this is how it, and the vision in the evening, so he's in Daniel chapter 8 now, on another occasion, right, in the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, so this is like a few years later. He's now saying how this visitation and vision affected him. And he's saying, and the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days, right? So the angel is telling him this, and the visions of the evening and the morning which was told is true. It's all on the same matter of the rise of an antichrist and the second coming of Jesus Christ, right? And so the angel in this visitation ends his talk with Daniel and these visions with Daniel, and says to him, the visions of the evening and the morning which was told is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So he's giving Daniel these visions, and these visions are for our day, for the last days, yet shall they be for many days. There finally be fulfilled in our day, in the latter days, in the last days, before Jesus Christ returns. So the ultimate thrust in all of this, of course, is the second coming of Jesus Christ and how he's going to set up his kingdom on earth. So quite clearly, it's talking about the latter days and the rise of an antichrist before Jesus returns. And so the angel again reassures Daniel that the visions of the evening and the morning, so I guess this vision must have gone on through the evening and the morning, which was told is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. It's going to be fulfilled just before the return of Jesus Christ. Now, how did this all affect you, Daniel, if we could ask him? Well, Daniel tells us how it affected him. He's told us how it affected him. In the first vision, his countenance changed. This is all very serious stuff. And his cogitations, his thoughts, as he said, my thoughts much troubled me. Troubling stuff. It's quite troubling to see the rise of an antichrist. It must have literally blown his mind. So it has various effects on people, and here's Daniel's effect on him more. And I, Daniel, more physically here. And I, Daniel, fainted. Right, so after these visions, they sapped the strength out of him. And I, Daniel, fainted. Now, this is a visitation by a very high up, powerful angel Gabriel. And he's saying this is how the whole thing zapped his strength. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days afterward. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business. And I was astonished. So his mental, again, his spiritual, mental state. And I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. So there's two interesting how these the effects these visions had on Daniel, and it tends to zap us. Sometimes we feel even overwhelmed by it all, and mentally you could say we're astonished and shocked. And so also it zapped his strength, and he was literally, Daniel, it says, and I, Daniel, fainted. So it took a lot of strength out of him going through these visitations. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days afterward. I arose and did the king's business. And I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. So he's kind of alone with his visions, really. None understood it, which is interesting, really. How does this affect you mentally, Daniel? Spiritually, mentally, however you want to look at that. Well, he was all alone with his visions. No one understood it. So quite a dramatic effect on Daniel. And you get another visitation here in Daniel 10. So he's having these various visitations. And they're more than one on a number of occasions. And so here he is, he's in the another culminating powerful visitation. I guess really the most powerful visitation he has is in Daniel 10, 11 and 12. So without going into the whole matter again of what the visitations were and what they entailed, We know it largely culminated in with the rise of an antichrist, the various rise and fall of world empires along the way. Daniel's shown all of this, so quite mind-blowing stuff. Daniel literally, his mind spanning across the ages, across hundreds, if even thousands of years, and seeing the rise and fall of these various world empires culminating in the rise of an antichrist and the second coming of Jesus Christ. So they're all along the same theme. And in the third year, with Daniel 10 now, Daniel yet gets another visitation. Well, Daniel, how did this all affect you physically, mentally, spiritually? Well, Daniel gives an account here again of how this affected him mentally, physically, spiritually in this chapter. But it's not all doom and gloom with Daniel, because these angels had a way of strengthening him. And so he's in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia. A thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long. So it's going into the future. Long because we're talking about, ultimately, don't forget, the second coming of Jesus Christ. The main thrust of the message, the rise of an antichrist. And then the second coming of Jesus Christ, the happy ending to the story. So the thing was true, but the time appointed was long. And he understood the thing. So Daniel got these visions. He understood it all. He wrote it all down. In fact, he understood the vision. Basically, everything he experienced, he wrote down, basically, in that he understood this was happening. It was real. And he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. So the angels give him a certain amount of understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread. So he appears to be praying here for 3 weeks, right? He's been mourning in his prayers for 3 weeks. And in those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 weeks. And as a rule, he's largely praying for his people. Praying for the children of God, his people. I ate no pleasant bread. Neither came fresh flesh nor wine in my mouth. So again, he's not partying, he's sobering up. Neither did I anoint myself at all, right? So he didn't ever do anything merrymaking. He didn't do having any kind of recreational things to do. So it's very, he didn't anoint myself at all. He was very sobered up, basically. Till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. So you picture here, really, it tells you later on, he'd been quite shook up by these visions. And so he's kind of praying for further understanding of what on earth, all these visions happening to him, blowing his mind, can't stop thinking about them. It's earth-shaking stuff, and it's sapping him of his mental energy. Even he faints, even is sick certain days after. So it must have really, really obviously had a major impact on his life. And so he's now praying for further understanding. And so he prays for 3 weeks. He didn't eat. He didn't eat any pleasant bread. In fact, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself at all till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. So he's been praying for 3 whole weeks. And he's not merrymaking or partying. He's sobering up. And in the 4th and 20th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel, then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. So after 3 weeks, finally he gets an answer to his prayer. And he goes into one of these visitations yet again. And now he's explaining what he sees, who he sees in this visitation. And in this visitation, which is the ultimate culmination of all of these visitations, because it includes all of these visitations, it climaxes here in Daniel 10, 11 and 12 being one book. And this is where these visitations come to a major climax. And so he's been praying for 3 whole weeks. And then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. Well, this sounds like a vision of Jesus Christ. Well, I know we're in the Old Testament, but Jesus Christ has been around since God even made the world. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's Jesus, the Word, right? All the things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So it was God and Jesus as one made the whole world. So here's Daniel. He has a visitation, and this time it's looking like it's Jesus Christ coming to him in a vision and visitation. So then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire. This sounds similar to the vision, that visitation that John had in the book of Revelation. And his arms and his feet like in colour to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone. And the thing is, with these visitations, they're often lonely experiences. So Daniel is kind of all alone in this vision. He's been praying for 3 whole weeks, no doubt, all alone, and he's very much alone in this vision. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. For the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. So I guess there's Daniel praying, and he appears to be near some kind of a river, and there's other people in the area. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them. So they hear this quaking, quaking coming from apparently nowhere. There wasn't an earthquake. These other men, this great quaking, in this sense, telling them to clear the area. So a major visitation taking place, and this quaking clearing the whole area. It kind of reminds you of that film, doesn't it? Close Encounters, where this sudden mothership came down, with that obviously more reference to the eventual coming, really, of a fake and false Messiah, in the sense coming down in a UFO and all this sort of thing. Not that, of course, but a great quaking fell upon them, so they fled to hide themselves. So these men in the area hear this great quaking, something supernatural, something spiritual is taking place. And in this sense, this quaking is telling them to leave the area. This vision is not for you. You're not invited to the visitation. So please, would you clear the area? This is important. This is massive. This is huge. And it's to Daniel alone. So that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone, and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me. So here's Daniel. He's talking about how these visitations and visions now affected him yet again. There was no strength left in him. This is a major visitation. This is like the climax of all of these visitations that Daniel had. And the immediate thing that happens to Daniel here is his energy is all zapped. Therefore I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness, right, is appearance, right? My comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. So suddenly he's not looking so ceremonious or anything. He's just simply a man who's lost his strength. His comeliness, you picture his face is just it's not looking anything special. My comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. Yeah, I heard the voice of his words. When I heard the voice of his words, then was I in deep sleep on my face, and my face toward the ground. So you picture here, he's not looking at a pretty sight. He's in a deep sleep now, on his face on the floor. Daniel was quite a high up minister in the Media Persian Empire, and even in Babylonian Empire. Here he is now. He's now in the Median Persian Empire. He's under the Persians in this vision, and so he's quite a high up minister, high up in office in government. And he's not a pretty sight. He's laying on his belly, like with his face to the floor. So his comeliness, he must have had, his hair must have been all over the place and all the rest of it. So he's not a pretty sight. His strength is zapped out of him. And he's lying on the floor with his face downwards. So therefore I was left alone and saw the great vision. There remained no strength in me. For my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. Yet heard I the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in deep sleep in my face, and my face toward the ground. So you picture him lying on the floor with his face toward the ground. He's got no strength left in him when he suddenly sees this vision, has this visitation, in fact. And behold, an hand touched me. So he's looking out over this river. He sees this visitation of, you get the description, which I've already given, and it sounds like Jesus. So he falls down as dead, kind of thing, like John did in the book of Revelation. He's got no strength in him. His face is on the ground. And suddenly this other angel in the vision comes over to him, and behold, an hand touched me, and which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. So this hand touches him, and it sets him upon all fours, really. And behold, an hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. So he's on all fours. He's got his palms of his hands and his knees down, so he sounds like he's on all fours. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved. So quite a very comforting voice. Daniel is zapped out, his mind's blown, his physical strength is gone out of him. He suddenly gets enough strength to go onto all fours at the words of this angel now strengthening Daniel. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words I speak unto thee, and stand upright. For unto thee am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. So again, you're getting how this affected Daniel. It's mind-blowing. This is real. It's really happening. He sees this vision of a man stood upon the waters, and of course it sounds like Jesus. Then suddenly this angel touches him and he goes on all fours, and then this angel tells him to stand up, and that I speak unto thee. So this angel say, and he said unto me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words I speak unto thee, and stand upright. For unto thee am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. Then said he unto me, fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand. So Daniel had been trying to understand further about these visions of visitations, and this angel knew that he'd been praying. So he's telling him, thus then said he unto me, fear not, Daniel. For from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself, right, sober, before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am now come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia, now he talks of why he delayed. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia, right, withstood me 21 days. Well, Daniel had been praying 21 days. This angel was battling out in the spirit world with this prince, this fallen angel over Persia, which was the real ruler of Persia, was trying to stop this angel getting in with this message. So this angel had been having a spiritual battle in this sense with this prince, with this fallen angel, with this archangel under the devil that was over Persia. So as St. Paul says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So this prince over Persia, trying to stop this angel from getting into to Daniel in answer to his prayer. He's been praying 3 weeks. This angel's been battling out for 3 whole weeks to bring this message to Daniel. And now he's telling Daniel what was the delay. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, now here's a visitation from Michael, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Right, so the kings of Persia on earth, this angel was no doubt remaining with the kings of Persia, while Michael the archangel sorted this problem out in the spiritual dimension, wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. And finally, this angel got through with this message for Daniel. Again, talking along the lines of the same great matter of the rise of an antichrist and the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now I am come, so now the angel gets through, and he's saying to Daniel, now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days. Now here we are, we're in the latter days. For yet the vision is for many days. So these angels sent to bring Daniel visions and to talk about our day. Now again, you get how this affected Daniel. And when he had spoken such words unto me, I set my face toward the ground, and I became dumb. So you picture here that Daniel was, 1 minute he's on his face, he's then on all fours, then he stood up trembling. Now this angel is telling him why he's come. He's come to give him further understanding along the lines of these visions, which Daniel had been praying for. And when he had spoken such words unto me, I set my face toward the ground, and I became dumb. So maybe he's back on the floor here, was he looking down? So he sets his face towards the ground. Maybe he stood up. It doesn't make it quite clear. I set my face toward the ground and became dumb. He didn't, in fact, have the strength to even speak. The strength has been zapped out of him by these angels visiting him, such powerful angels, and to be in their presence and to have these visions, no doubt, zapped all of Daniel's strength. And behold, one like the similitude of the sons of men, right? So this angel is a man, he looks like a man. And behold, one like the similitude of the sons of men touched me, touched my lips. So this angel actually touched his lips. So, and behold, one like the similitude, looked like a man, of the sons of men, touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spake and said unto him, so he had no strength before that. This angel now strengthening his very tongue, strengthening his lips. He had no strength to even speak. I guess he could barely get up onto his knees. And then he could barely get up onto his feet, shaking, as he said, trembling. He's in the presence of an angel. He's seeing this vision. This is a climatic event, culminating in all of these visions, sapping his strength, blowing his mind. And now this angel, he can't even speak, touches his mouth so that he can speak. So, and behold, one like the similitude of the sons of men touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spake, and said unto him that stood before me, O my Lord, by the visions my sorrows are turned upon me, and I have retained no strength. So it's literally shook him up. And his sorrows are turned upon him. He's all alone in this. Who on earth's going to believe him anyway? So he's oh my Lord, by the vision my sorrows are turned upon me, and I have retained no strength. For how can the servant of this my Lord talk with this my Lord? For as for me, straightway there remained no strength in me, neither is there breath left in me. Could barely even breathe. Then there came again and touched me one like the appearance of a man, and he strengthened me. So, and then says, and said, O man, greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be unto thee. Be strong. Yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. So these angels visiting Daniel here, blowing his mind with all of these visions, but don't forget, culminating in the second coming of Jesus Christ. And Daniel quite shook up by all of this, the Antichrist going to arise and wear out the saints of the Most High. Daniel literally stood in the presence of an angel and shaking, finding himself flat on his face, zapped of all of his strength, then on his knees, then stood up trembling. Then he could barely speak, let alone barely breathe. And then this angel touches his lips and strengthens him. So in all of this, really, the ultimate thing here is that these angels do strengthen people. So isn't it nice to know that these angels visited Daniel, and though it's quite mind-blowing stuff, though it has a way of getting your mind spinning round, it's very sobering. Daniel was very sobered up by all of this. He even fainted, and he was sick certain days after. But ultimately, in this visitation here, this angel touches his lips and strengthens him, so gives him strength. For how, Daniel again saying, for how can the servant of this my Lord talk with this my Lord? For as for me, straightway there remained no strength in me, neither is there breath left in me. Then there came again and touched me one like the appearance of a man, and he strengthened me, and said, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto thee. Be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. So, praise Jesus.